Welcome, everyone, to the Breaking Bias podcast. We're here for another episode post-Australian Grand Prix. My name is Oscar Pula, and I am joined by the amazing, the Powertrain Queen, Molly. How's it going, Molly? How you doing?
I'm doing good, Dr. Obbs. I am still struggling to get back on a good time zone following the Australian Grand Prix. And I don't know why I'm bothering because we're going to be right back to it with China this weekend. How are you?
I'm doing good. I haven't looked, to be honest, I haven't looked at the times for China yet, so I don't know what I'm getting into. But Australia was definitely one of those moments for my wife where she's like, you're staying up to do what? Till when?
I know. I went out Saturday night. I came in from the bar literally in time with a slice of pizza in hand to watch the start of the Australian Grand Prix because I am that kind of sicko. So it worked out so perfect, though.
Hey, that's perfect for Americans with those time zones because it's kind of like, you know what? Like you can go out, you can party, you can have a social life, and then you can just stroll into the house real late and watch some Formula One.
It was perfect. And then I went to bed. It was the best thing ever.
Unlike my time when I lived in the UK where it was okay, do I want to wake up at 4 a.m.? Do I want to wake up again at 6 a.m. or 7 a.m.? I don't miss that bit.
So,
Yeah, so we're here. We had the first race of the season.
We did.
There is a lot to talk about.
Very much.
So just to give everybody a bit of a preview, we will definitely at the end, so stay tuned, talk about Flexi-wing drama that's coming out again. We will talk about the updated technical directive. We'll even talk about the latest bombshell. Let's tease it. Are V10s coming back?
I don't know.
Biofuel V10s? Okay, we'll talk about it later. Let's not spoil it. So starting with free practice. So we had testing. We already did the episode on testing. We talked a lot about all the different things we saw during testing. Cars showed up now.
Where we kind of expected things to shake out.
Yes,
all of that
and
good
honestly,
stuff.
I don't think we did a real bad job.
I don't think so either, honestly.
Right there or thereabouts. Maybe we sort of undersold Red Bull a little bit and they overachieved. Maybe that's like Lord Dark Helmet says, the Max Factor or whatever, as I like to call Helmet Marco.
Probably Max Factor, like I said at the end of last season, is like Max dragged a car that had no business where it was in the standings to a world championship. So I think it's the same thing, but we'll get into it. I think that car has a
we'll get
pretty
into
narrow working window. So
absolutely. So we didn't see a lot of changes from testing going into the first race, although we did see Red Bull had something like 15 updates on the table. So first thing about these update tables, teams run fast and loose with them. Honestly, like this is what I've heard from people on teams is that not everything is always there.
Correct. You only really have to update it if it is something that you can see with your eyes, essentially. Yeah. So there is stuff on those cars that we likely don't know that also got updated. It's kind of visible only, and teams don't put everything on there.
Right. So all that just to say that there was a race one package update for Red Bull. Yes. They pulled some of it forward to testing, but there were a few extra bits that I was told about that are there for the first race. We don't know 100% certainty if any other teams brought anything because, like Molly said, it's a bit here and there on what should be in there.
Yes.
But one of the interesting things that I think came out right away from free practice was, number one, we had a lot of variability in conditions during free practice, right? It was like cold and then it was like hot and it was like windy and not and then we had rain. So there was a lot of issues. Let's start with Ferrari. A lot of weird stuff going on with Ferrari. Ferrari fast on FP2 second session. Everybody was like, whoa, Ferrari.
I was like so excited.
Yes. And then FP3 is always meh, what are people doing? Is it representative or not? We got to qualifying and Ferrari's like off the pace, like something has changed. What changed? What do we know, Molly?
I'm not sure. I actually haven't kept up too much on that. This is like my own. I've been really bad at keeping up with stuff because I'm just a little all over the place. But part of me wonders if they just kind of missed the setup or they were thinking conditions were going to be different. I don't know if you've heard something official, but like my gut feel is they were trying something. And I think what I have seen, Charles did say that they were trying something. I don't know what it was, but they were trying something and it didn't work. They made a decision and it was in the wrong direction, right?
So you're there, Molly. Honestly,
am I? Okay.
You're there. That's the main point. That's the primary point. Is that Charles mentioned they were doing something in free practice that they couldn't necessarily translate to the race.
I wonder what they were doing.
So there's a couple thoughts here, right? So one of the things that we had from Coda in 2023
was it the DQ year or the non-DQ?
The DQ year for the planks.
last year.
Was that 2024?
I don't know. I was there. I should know.
Oh my.
I think it was 2 years ago.
I think it was 2023. Okay.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I should know this. Right. I don't. Yeah. It's fine.
It's okay. There's a lot of races. Let's give ourselves some grace.
Yeah.
But right. So you can run the car low in free practice. You're not subject to any sort of plank wear restrictions or anything.
Yeah.
They may have been looking for found performance in free practice too. But then after the session was like, we are chewing up planks. Maybe that's one thing. That's an idea that's getting tossed around. Another idea that got tossed around was around bouncing, like aero bouncing. Yeah. Any chance that maybe because, they were running so low, they triggered aero bouncing. Mm-hmm. And now this became an issue.
My other thought was maybe tires, because we know that they're struggling with DEG a little bit already. Could they have, whatever they did, lowered it or found for performance? Could that have been it? Because I don't, and this is where I should know this because ECUs and software rules, maybe they were doing something in maps, but I think your maps are locked at that point already. So I don't think you can throw some fun stuff in. I think you get your software set at the start of the weekend. I could be wrong, but I don't think there's anything in like mapping that they were looking for performance either. Like, they could have clipped in their maps, but I don't think that was it.
I thought in free practice you could.
You could, but for qualifying though.
Yeah. No, qualifying has to be fixed.
Yeah, no party modes.
Yeah, no more party modes or anything.
Yeah.
But I think, so you mentioned tires. That's where my brain went initially. Yeah. Was everybody was really struggling in qualifying with tires once they got to sector 3.
Yeah.
I listened to the onboards for Verstappen, and he was like, tires are cooked by like the last 2 corners. I mean, he's got no tires left. So that's where the McLaren was incredibly strong. Yeah. They were just gapping everybody in sector 3. And, it translated to the race with their tire preservation. But could this have been an issue for Ferrari?
Because that was something out of testing we were like, we're going to keep a little bit of an eye on and how they're going to set up or kind of work their way out of that box, because it's kind of sins of the past potentially where they're fast, but they can't keep up on tires. Like, was that 2022? I think it was.
Yes. 2022 was terrible.
And
to a good extent 2023 as well, but there's so setup changes that maybe could be a part of this. Tire preservation issues. Essentially in free practice they were maybe not taking as much because they weren't running so much out of the engine. They weren't taking so much out of sector 2, which has real high speeds. And so possibly we're able to preserve some tires and find a bit more in sector 3. But then that wouldn't explain what Charles said, which was that they had to make some changes, right?
Yes. So and that they were trying something, and that he's normally really tight-lipped. Yeah. So for him to say that, I think was interesting. He's normally pretty like, oh, well, like the team and I did this, and he'll kind of shoulder that. But to say that they like trying something is a little more candid from him.
But hey, a little bit of hope for the Tifosi, Vasseur, all others were saying, look, this is not the Ferrari that we know. There's much more pace in the car, or something just happened this weekend we didn't get right. Maybe it was a setup issue.
Really hope it's not correlation, because like another team with correlation problems, I can't do this.
Well, I can tell you what some people think that I've talked to is that they think that they again have a narrow setup window. Yeah. They had to change the setup to take the car out of either plank wear issue, aero bouncing issue, and all of a sudden drop tons of pace. And what they're looking at is, we can't really. Again.
Crap. I know. I mean, I don't want to say I'm surprised. I think speaking of lower setup windows from free practice into the race, Red Bull was doing a lot of exploration, I think, during the weekend. And there were some allegations. People thought they were sandbagging and all of that good stuff. What do you make of that? I think we both think it's also a narrow setup window, at least right now.
Yeah, I think the setup window is better than it was with the RB20. That's mostly the consensus from the team. It's still not this wide-ranging setup window that they had, maybe with other cars or compared to, say, the McLaren, who seems to get it right away.
They can roll that thing off the truck and it's good to go.
Yeah, I mean, we could set that car.
We could. I mean, that's complimenting us, but also complimenting the car.
Yeah, exactly. We could nail that.
We could set that car up.
But it's so I think Red Bull, good and bad. The car did to me look more stable over the course of the weekend. There was some issues where they were running through certain setups and Max was not happy. with those setups. Those mostly came during, oh gosh, when was that? Was Saturday. Yep. That was the Saturday session where, no.
Was it Friday?
It was Friday. It was a Friday
session.
For
us, but yeah.
Yeah, it was the
was
FP1, FP2.
Yeah.
So that was Thursday, Friday for us. But basically the issue being that it looked good for a minute. They started to kind of turn up the wick for FP2 and things sort of fell out.
Yes.
My mentions were full of doom posters from Red Bull who was like, the season's over. And I was
Pack
like,
it up.
I mean, I was trying to prepare everybody, like,
yeah.
And honestly, I probably shouldn't try to police the internet because I do that probably way too much. But in trying to police the Red Bull fan base, I was like, just get ready. Like, this car is not the McLaren yet. Just be prepared that there's going to be ups and downs. I mean, over the course of a race weekend. And inevitably, they found something overnight that they were able to set up or put into the car.
Bless their sim team and everybody running stuff overnight at the factory.
Yes, exactly. Team no sleep.
Yes.
And that's pretty much like a given for those guys at Milton Keynes. They're like, we're not going to get it on the first day.
Oh, yeah. Unrecognized heroes here. The team back at Milton Keynes that is working around the clock with the team
Is it still Buemi? Is it still Sebastian Buemi on the simulator?
I have no clue because he's on a Formula E schedule right now.
We need to find that out.
Yeah, I thought it was Sebastian Buemi, but I don't know who they have on contract right now.
It was last year.
Yeah, it was last year. I don't know who now. It could still be him then with Formula E stuff. So it wouldn't surprise me. But is he racing WEC this year or racing IMSA?
I don't know.
Because there was an IMSA event over the weekend. I don't think so. So he could be their sim driver still.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because Liam's not the reserve anymore.
No.
Isaac's the reserve, but Isaac's driving.
They have the racing sim driver also who was previously at Mercedes that moved over to Red Bull. What's his name again?
I don't know. I don't remember.
Everybody listening is like shouting in their speakers right now. They're like,
hold on, we're gonna Google this.
You idiots.
Red Bull Simulator drivers Mercedes. One sec. Jarno?
Yeah, Jarno. Alpamir.
Yes.
He's
in their sim.
He's one of them, so he would probably have been burning the midnight oil for sure.
Yeah.
But I guess the main thing for Red Bull, they worked magic overnight, found a good setup that they could then race with and qualify with.
Yep.
I'm a mess over here. Sorry.
It's all right. It's normally me.
Yeah, I don't know. I had to scarf down my lunch because I had like meetings back to back.
That's okay. Yeah.
And I didn't have that hour's worth of like, oops, I messed up the time zone. I was like,
yeah, like me. So like for anybody that didn't see my tweets, Obbs is in Central Time Zone. I'm in Eastern Time Zone. And so we were like 2:00, we're recording.
Yeah.
1:45 like rolls around Eastern Time. I'm like, shit, I'm like 2 bites into my lunch. I inhale my lunch, go finish my makeup, like get my lights on, get everything set up over here, like record time. And I'm like, all right, I'm here, Obbs. And he's like, we have an hour.
I'm like, we still have another hour. You're like,
I was like,
okay. No, that works.
It was great. Like, I just kind of chilled and did some other stuff, which was nice. But I was like, you're kidding me.
Yeah. That's much better than the, hey, you're an hour late to the podcast.
Yes. Oh my God. I run on like Molly standard time. So it's like if we're meeting at like 3, I'm there at 3:05 or something. Like you just add 5 minutes to whenever we're supposed to be there. And that's Molly standard time. But we have a friend who runs on AST. I'm not going to name his name because I know that there are people that listen to us that know him. And I don't know if he consents to this, but he is 17 minutes on the nose to arrival time. That's his standard time. So we just know if it's 7:00, 7:17, he's rolling up.
Nice. I'm always early. I'm like the, eternally early guy. That's probably because like I have high functioning anxiety. So it's sort of like, like if I'm not there early, I'm usually like panicking.
That's for the train here in Charlotte to like go into town and stuff. There's like, you have an app, you can see when the trains are coming. I like friends will just be like, oh, we're taking the 6:50 train. And I'm like, cool, okay. So I get there at 6:45. It's 6:55 train. My friends are lying to me about train times now.
Just so you'll be on time.
Yes. Because I play what's called train chicken, where like as long as I'm there about 2 to 3 minutes before the train rolls up, I don't care. But then by the time I deal with a lift or I walk, whatever, I'm like sprinting, like trains on the platform, I'm sprinting to get to the train, or I can like see it coming and I'm like not on the platform. So my friends started to lie to me about train times.
Oh my gosh. That's how you know your friends love you. They're taking care of
totally.
You. They're working around MST for sure.
They're trying to break MST.
Yeah, exactly. Well, let's get back to topics at hand. So, speaking of maybe a car that didn't seem to have narrow setup windows, McLaren looks tidy and good. Although, I have to say, watching things on Friday, I was surprised. Like, I did feel like the drivers were having to fight the car maybe a little bit more than normal.
The car's very edgy.
Yeah, so it does have a fast window. It does still, dominate through most different types of
very
corners.
Very
well balanced. But yeah, it felt like the drivers were having to fight it a bit more to extract the full potential. So maybe there's something to watch there.
Yeah, there is. And it seems like they were maybe complaining about not as good tire heat up. I think I saw on the radio.
Yeah, they were having some issues with warm up, and then at the end they were having with overheating. So, but that was on Friday. So then I guess they found something. To figure
looked
out
at it and corrected it, maybe in toe camber or something.
Or other things.
So not going there.
Moving to the race.
Yes.
Well, qualifying. Okay, let's talk about qualifying. So we had McLaren front row lockout. I think most all of us were expecting that. Things were close up until that final qualifying Q3. But then somewhere Lando and Piastri just put it all out there and
I think there was, talking to some friends, some fear of like, oh shit, are they gonna do what Red Bull did and win every race?
Yeah.
Based on that qualifying statement.
Still very much a possibility because, one of the things we saw was when McLaren was out there and they had, dry weather tires on and they were gapping people. I mean, they gapped Max.
I mean, even that quali gap was pretty serious.
Quali gap was big, but then the gap maintained itself to race pace. You didn't you don't have a situation like you had with the Ferraris in 2023, I think it was, where it was like super
great
fast
over one lap.
on a single lap, but like can't hold on the tires over a race. McLaren seems to have found the black magic.
Yeah, whatever that may be.
Yeah, exactly. But, if we start, I guess, from the race and the challenges that the race presented, it was a wet race.
Yep.
The Albert Park had been resurfaced last year, I think, right?
Yes.
They made some changes this year, but Albert Park, maybe for some of our listeners who, aren't so insane about Formula One like we are, Albert Park is like a normal road. There's like normal streets. There's like white lines for bike lanes and stuff on the track.
Yeah, you can go run and bike that track 6 to 8 months out of the year when it's not being set up for Formula One.
Yeah, and they don't do like they do in Vegas, where in Vegas they like completely resurface the roads to get like, so you didn't see anything with the normal lanes and things like that. No, this is like you're running
public
on
roads.
that road, at that public road. So all the white paint that's there is super slick when it gets wet. And so we saw people just binning it. Like we saw Hadjar on the formation lap.
Yep.
Right.
It caught Kimi and Snelly as well. I know he complained about it. I mean, even some of the veterans were complaining about it. And I don't know if it's like it's probably the type of white paint that they used. And with it being so new as well, it's not worn in. It's not like the like if you've ever touched that on a road, it's very slippery.
Yeah.
And as it comes down over time, the texture of the road will come through. But it was causing a lot of problems. It's like field lines on like turf fields being slippery because it's a different mu, which is a coefficient of friction from what teams are planning for, and that amount of disruption disrupts this. I'm doing a finger motion for anybody that's just audio only, but it disrupts the this of the tire into the track essentially, and just completely unloads and just grip gone.
Yeah, no
in
adhesion.
Wet conditions.
Yeah,
exactly.
No adhesion. So then you just get, let's see, who crashed?
Alonso,
Carlos Sainz, Jack Doohan, Liam Lawson.
I mean, Oscar and Lando both had it in the grass, the gravel at one point.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
Kimi saved it. He was pretty close. He had a pretty wild save during the race.
Yeah.
So, I mean that's just who I saw.
Even on those laps where Max was driving in the rain on the slicks before he went to the inters, if you watch the onboard, I was like watching it and I was like, I didn't realize that I was like clenching my fists while I was watching it. Until like when I was watching it, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm totally stressed. I'm like clenching my fists. Like this is stressful.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Like I need to breathe.
Yeah, it's because that's, it's so much on the limit. And but not only so, was it a rookie thing? You had a bunch of rookies that fell out. Is it a rookie thing? Lack of experience driving in the wet? What do we think about the rookies?
I think it's a combination of things, because people just purely blaming rookies, I don't think that's it. There's part of it, but it's like you have to understand the context of the rookie in some of these situations. So like Isaac has never driven this track. He's never driven an F1 car. Jack Doohan knows this track, has been in an F1 car. Liam has been in an F1 car. Like there's a varying experience level here that I think you have to take in context with the rookies, and can't just be like, oh my God, the rookies suck. I don't think that that's a fair...
Liam had never driven this track either.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, Liam had never driven Albert Park. I couldn't remember which side he fell on.
It had a complete, FP2 was it? Or FP3 where the car... No, FP3?
I don't remember.
One of the sessions where the car did not work.
Full compromise session, yeah.
Yeah, did not work.
He had a full compromise practice session.
Yeah, and I think it was FP3. I think it was FP3.
You might be right.
Yeah, because
you might be right.
Because that FP1, FP2 was disaster for both drivers.
Yeah.
They made a bunch of changes. They wanted to test them in FP3. Liam comes out, starts doing first runs, and there's like a P issue.
Yeah.
And then he never came back out.
Yep. And then he got knocked out in Q1.
Yep.
But yeah, so I think that there's important context around the rookies that you can't just be like, oh, this is rookies' lack of experience, because you have a varying experience level, rookie or non-rookie, with this track period, and it still caught everybody out. So I think that like whether you were a rookie or have driven an F1 car before, if it's just downright, like I think it plays more into people who have likely never driven this track before, because you've never driven it, 1, 2, it was resurfaced, and like all of that, right? So like the sim only does so much, and the simulators nowadays do a really, really good job at preparing these guys, but they're still completely different on track. Sometimes it's a different feel and all of that. You can build the confidence, but once you're truly there, a different story.
Yeah. I mean, you had to feel terrible for Ollie Behrman. Behrman or Behrman?
Behrman.
You had to feel terrible for Ollie Behrman.
Yeah.
Obviously, 2 crashes during free practice that just completely compromised his running. You had Alonso that crashed, Carlos Sainz that crashed as well. So during the race. So I mean, there was, there was lots of treacherous driving out there.
My fantasy team. I had Sainz, Hadjar, and Doohan.
Ouch. Oof. Yeah. That's tough.
Oh, yeah. But, yeah.
Team Bennett in the wall.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
You should change your fantasy team name.
Hey, I'm really proud of my fantasy team name, so I'm probably not going to change it.
Would you like to share with the thousands of viewers and listeners?
It is Born Again Christian Horner.
Nice.
It keeps on the theme of my fantasy football team, because I have Christian McCaffrey. It's Christian Mingle. So
nice.
I thought that was pretty funny.
I like it. That's good.
Thank you. Back on track, though.
Yeah, back on track. So, right. So that's kind of all the accidents we had. But then once we had the dry running, semi-dry running, like a dry line.
Yes.
The McLarens were off and running. I think at one point they gapped Max by 40 seconds.
Yep.
Max had 15, 16, 17 seconds on George Russell.
Yep.
So it's like, it was the McLarens, it was Max.
As we expected.
And then it was everybody else.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah. So it kind of fits into sort of what we were saying, I guess, when we're thinking about pace.
Yeah.
The McLarens being far ahead of everybody, the Red Bull with Max being closest, and then where does Mercedes and Ferrari land? Mercedes, I thought, would be closer to Red Bull.
Yeah.
Maybe this is just something having to do with this particular track.
Yeah, the Max effect too, like we were saying.
Yeah, the Max effect. And then Ferrari obviously had some troubles.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm intrigued, speaking of Ferrari troubles. I don't know if you listened to Lewis's radio for this race. I was really intrigued, so I was listening to it to see how he and it's not Zabi. Is it Ricardo Adami that is his race engineer? I should know this. It's Carlos Sainz' old race engineer, to see how they were communicating together.
Yeah.
Because like Lewis has only always ever had Bono. Or is it Vasquez is this race engineer? Are you looking this up for me? I should know this and I don't.
Yes, sorry, I'm looking it up.
Okay.
It's Ricardo Adami.
That's what I thought. Okay, so it was Adami. I was really curious. So Adami and Sainz worked together, and I'm going to be really intrigued to see how this evolves, because it seems like Lewis is not too keen on how he communicates with him. And there were also very stark communication differences between what Charles was being given by Brian and what Lewis was being given by Ricardo. And like, hey, there's 3 laps of rain and this and that. We see this. Lewis was being given something completely different. He wasn't told about the rain.
Oh, that it was really? I didn't pick up on
there was a difference in like, hey, there's rain coming in 3 laps. Lewis was not told about it, from what I heard on the radio. But they, like, Brian was telling Charles, we think it's going to be this class rain in X amount of laps. So we're working towards that, and we're going to try and stay out for that, or we're going to pit you here for that. Lewis was never told about the class change of rain.
That's really interesting. I mean, because like, every driver is different and wants things a different way. It will take some time for, Ricardo, Adami, and Lewis to figure out kind of what their working style is like.
Yes.
Whereas Max, when you were listening to the onboards when Max was on the slicks, so, they decided they pitted the McLarens. They didn't pit Max.
Yep. They kept him out. I was surprised. I thought they were going to cover him.
Yeah.
Or they were going to cover.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it was worth a shot, honestly. They knew they had a pace deficit.
Yeah.
So it was worth a shot. It wasn't quite the reach that I think Ferrari made. But with that said, the whole time that Max is out there, he's asking for information. He's saying, I can't see the radar. GP is talking to him. GP is asking him. Max is telling him almost from like corner to corner where it's wet.
Yeah.
He's saying it's raining here. It's not raining here. It's not wet here. So he's telling GP, they're making choices. He's like, you have to tell me, what I need to do or whatever. So Max, I think, was asking for a lot of information. That's interesting though, that Charles and Hamilton were a bit different.
Yeah. And I think that was for like anybody who's curious about how that works and wants to learn more about like how drivers and race engineers communicate. I think that conversation with Max and GP is like an all time. If you just go watch that on just go watch Max's on board. But like that was a really informative period of laps between Max and GP, which like they communicate really well together, but that was so informative of like how they were doing the decision making and everything. And Max was asking for versus what GP was giving him. Then the fact that Max is able to process that as he's operating a car in the rain at 200 plus miles an hour
and
whatever
GP,
it is, or kilometers per hour,
and GP as well, to be able to manage it. For anybody that doesn't know, race engineers literally have comms from so many different people. Like the strategists are giving him comms, the engineers back at the factory who are doing calculations giving him comms, the simulation people, about what if we pit here, the pit windows and all that stuff. He's got so many people in his ear. GP is trying to listen to what Max is saying, listen to what these other people are telling him as well. And then Max is wanting answers. Now GP has to be like, hey, we're talking about this. We'll come back to you or whatever.
Yep. And make decisions.
And managing all that and then making a decision.
Yeah. And this is one thing I like. I don't know if a lot of people talk about this, but like teams rehearse this and practice this. There are rehearsals and race simulations that happen at the factory in the off season where it's like a murder mystery party, but a race.
Ah, cool.
Essentially. And so there will only be 1 or 2 people that actually know how this race is going to play out. Race, I say in air quotes. And they're going to put all of those people in a room. So like the race engineers, the strategists, the performance engineers, like everybody that's going to be part of like a pit wall and like the war rooms, the factories. And they're going to let this race play out with a script. Like they're going to prompt and certain things are going to happen and it's simulated. And the race engineer, race engineer, the strategist, performance engineers, aero engineers, all that, they have to make decisions and it drives what happens in that room for the race.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
And so that's something that teams will do and practice. And it's a big thing for like the strategy team and the race engineers, so that when like situations like this arise, whatever situations it may be, they've rehearsed or have gone through things and they know what these calls are, or they know how to make these calls or know what to do. And it helps with their information processing. And that happens back at the factory. I don't know if a lot of people know or talk about that, but I know a lot of teams actually do that, where like the team principal or like the sporting director might be the only person that knows the outcome here of how this is going to end, either race win, they don't win, whatever, but they're going to let everybody in the room with this script that they're doing try to play the race out so that they can work through all of this stuff. And they'll be like drivers calling for this or saying the car's doing this, and it changes the way, like it's a choose your own adventure, how things play out and what they have to do.
That's really cool. I mean, it makes a lot of sense, honestly.
Yeah.
I prefer, whether you're talking about the military doing some of their exercises, sports teams going through the motions and doing some of the things based off of different scenarios.
Yeah.
It all just becomes like a little bit of muscle memory, mental memory, kind of like, how do I manage this? I mean, I know I would be terrible at it because like when I've got my 3 kids just like all talking to me at the same time, I can't keep my head straight.
Information overload.
Yeah. I'm like, can one person talk to me at a time, please? And I'm not managing a race in like a car that's about to slide off the track. So big respect, honestly, big respect to all of the race engineers, the drivers from this weekend, because that was not an easy situation.
No. And so do we want to talk about that, kind of the calls that were made across the board
talk about that.
To make the switch from slicks to inters as things dried out, and some teams maybe that it didn't play out very well for?
Yeah, absolutely. So, we had a dry line. The cars were on slicks. I think Max had pitted because there was a previous safety car, so he went to the softs. So I think Max was actually on softs, which if you don't know, the softs will actually heat up because they're softer than other compound tires, so they'll get hot faster.
Yes.
And when it's raining and you're driving on like a wet track, that's actually to your advantage that you have this softer compound on, because it can manage, the weird sort of crossover. You might be able to extend the crossover potentially.
Yeah.
So they made the call to stay out when the McLarens then pitted to go get the inners.
Yep.
So that was, it didn't really completely pay off, but it didn't necessarily massively hurt him.
No.
Either. I think it was worth a shot, whereas like Ferrari made the call to stay out and they stayed out way too long. And so the problem being that now, so this is the other bit that maybe we didn't talk about. The whole time Max is out there on the slicks, GP is telling him Lando's intersector times.
Yes.
So they're monitoring whoever is now on the inter and what the sector times are. And if they're going a lot faster than that, your car on the slicks that might be struggling a little bit.
Yes.
The minute the inners start to go much faster than the slicks, you pit, you put the inners on.
Yep.
But by then, if it's too late, you've already lost all of that cumulative sector time that the other cars have gained on you.
Yep.
And when you pit, now you're way behind. So that's kind of what Ferrari fell into.
Yeah, I think Alpine fell into that too with Gasly. I think they kept him out too long too. Yeah.
Okay.
From what I saw, I think I recall that he made his crossover too late as well and kind of lost his time because he's always so good in the rain and decently strong to the Alpine. And that's kind of what knocked him out of the points, is they waited too long.
Yeah.
But
I think with Mercedes, they made a great call.
They did.
George came in at the right time. Kimi came in at the right time. Kimi jumped a bunch of spots.
Do you know how and why that happened?
No.
It was in one of their press releases, like their post-race debrief. They had a spotter 3 kilometers away at St. Kilda Beach doing weather spotting, telling them when it was coming, how it was coming, the direction it was coming, and like how heavy the rain was. And that factored their decision. And you're allowed to have weather spotters around the track. That's totally normal. Just like teams of spy photographers, you're allowed to have a weather spotter. And so they had a weather spotter, and I think St. Kilda Beach is just like southeast slightly. It's just south of the track. And so they had a weather spotter out there relaying them real time what was coming and when. And that's basically what drove them, pun intended, to time the pits when they did and execute that so perfectly because they had that information from the spotter.
That's amazing. No, that's a great bit of information there, Molly. I mean, it's like, that's almost like the old school, like stick the hand out in the pit lane sort of a thing, but like it's stand on the beach and like stick the hand up.
I mean, I'd not complain if I got to go to Australia and stand on the beach and radio for my team on weather. And especially
like if you know that like most of the weather comes in from the beach, then that's exactly where you'll be.
Yeah, exactly. And I think teams do that in Zandvoort as well. There's a few tracks where having a weather spotter is really, really common. And you'll place them depending on your track, multiple points around the track. Otherwise, you'll kind of like rely on your photographers or whatever, or team staff that you already have, letting you know what conditions are where on the track. I think Spa is one, they'll have spotters as well. But I think this is the first time that I've seen it publicly acknowledged that they've said we did this because of our weather spotter. Because weather spotters are kind of like a poorly kept secret in like the paddock and in F1, I think.
Yeah. So, hey, if there's any other team members that are listening right now would like to slide it in the DMs and let us know that you had weather spotters too, we'd love to know that.
That's super
curious.
Cool. It's like I said, it's kind of like a poorly kept secret, but I don't know who fully uses them, just have never seen it acknowledged like that ever. And like, hey, yeah, we got strategy right because our weather spotter at the beach was feeding us the right information.
That's cool. That's really cool. So what about like the overall pace? Let's talk about the pace kind of across the grid. We did talk about McLaren already. We talked about Red Bull.
Talked about Mercedes, Ferrari.
So what about the midfield? How is the midfield looking?
Who do we think is the best of the rest?
Well, Albon had a great race.
Yeah.
Was
what the heck?
P4 before.
Yeah.
So when Kimi got dropped back, he was P4, but then they revoked the whole Kimi penalty, so he became P5. But I mean, fantastic result. Williams.
Yeah.
Right there, we had talked about, is the Williams pace real?
I think
it seems like it is, but it's hard to say for sure. It wasn't like a complete dry race. No. There's a lot of funny stuff that happened. So maybe the jury's
I feel like there's like a close, like it's Williams v Carb Alpine.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Well, that's what we were thinking.
Yeah, I think I think it's those three, and it's going to kind of be an interchangeable of those three. I think that might be your fight.
Where was Aston Martin? I should, before Alonso crashed.
I think that they were like mid to low.
Was it like the lower end of the midfield?
Yeah.
We're so bad at like
it's fine.
knowing every single thing that happened, but
yeah, because that's like Lance somehow pulled out a P6 right in the race.
Yeah.
But like he was like, I have no pace. Like that was purely like the weather being the great equalizer.
And other cars falling out.
Yeah. You had 5 or 6 DNFs. So
yeah.
I think
Haas was nowhere, which we pretty much called that.
We were hoping.
Steak?
I think Steak's still nowhere.
Really?
Steak was nowhere, if I recall as well. They were with Haas, I think, the whole time.
I'm pulling this up to re-educate myself.
If I recall correctly.
Yeah. Okay. So we had So Kimi. I mean, look, props to Kimi Antonelli. That was an amazing
big props.
race. If you have not seen the pass that Kimi made. Who did he make the pass on? No. Oh my gosh, where did he make the pass? He made a pass on somebody that was brilliant. Anyway, can't think of it. Oscar Piastri's pass on Lewis Hamilton. Incredible.
Yes.
But, okay, so Kimi Antonelli P4.
Yep.
Albon P5, Lance Stroll P6, as you said. Nico in the kick Sauber P7. And then you had Leclerc P8, Piastri P9. Hamilton P10, so naturally because of the screw up from the Ferraris, you got an elevated. And
Oscar put himself in the grass.
You got an elevated Stroll and an elevated Hulk, so that's probably not representative.
No.
You had Gasly, who was left out too late as well, not necessarily representative.
No.
What happened to Yuki? Yuki ended up P12, but like, what happened there? I can't. Did they pit him late? We need to go back and look at that. They might have pitted him too late, right? And Behrman was last. So
yes.
Okay, well let's see what happens during the next race. China should be dry from everything I've seen, right?
Yes,
is it gonna be cold though?
It's cold. Yeah. So talking to some friends, they were complaining how cold it was today instead of today. So it's gonna be chilly. I was like, I want the sun back.
Yeah. Well, let's how might that play into things? I mean. Mercedes all of last year was great in the cold weather, so maybe they like their chances a little bit in the cold weather. Alpine, McLaren was even in a non-upgraded McLaren last year. Was strong in China, so I expect McLaren to just honestly run away.
I was like, hee hee ha ha, it's 24 degrees C here because I was converted from my UK friends, and they're like, I'm blocking you.
Yeah, it's
so.
When you live in speaking from experience, when it's March and especially when you're a transplant, like expat from the US and you're like, it should start feeling warm now. And you're in the UK and it's freezing in March still. I mean, in Scotland, it would snow sometimes the end of March. I was like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
But okay. So China's going to be cool.
A little cooler.
That should be really interesting.
Yeah.
What's going to happen there? I mean, okay, so we think about the tire pace advantage that McLaren has. So tire degradation due to overheating and colder track temps should be less of an issue.
Should be. We might run into cold graining.
Yeah, you can certainly get graining whenever you have like massive surface heating and the bulk tire temps are low because of low atmospheric temperatures.
Yeah.
But heat up, warm up.
Yeah.
That's going to be a question. These are brand new Pirelli tires this year.
Yes.
All new construction. I've heard some things and having a few conversations with people that some teams have done a good job of understanding the new tire.
Others not so much.
And others not so much. So maybe also this is like a Ferrari thing. Maybe this is a Red Bull thing as well because they're cooking their tires.
Maybe.
That's a variable that we haven't talked about really.
No, exactly. So I think that's going to be one to watch. I think along with some of the post-race fallout that's happening on the technical side, which I think that has to be part of this upcoming for China conversation around the Flexi-wing stuff that was not supposed to really come in until, was it Spain, is now being put in China after the cameras saw movement and all of that.
Yeah. So the front wing flex stuff that's coming in for Spain is still there. The rear wing flex got pulled forward because they put high resolution cameras during the Australian Grand Prix and saw...
Words are hard, Obbs. It's okay.
Yeah. And saw that there was a lot of things going on that they weren't necessarily okay with, decided to accelerate via technical directive, and now have implemented 0.5 millimeter gap between main plane and DRS flap, including the end tips. So not just the flap, but it goes all the way around as well now.
And it used to be 2 millimeters? So you're cutting that down. Before,
Yeah, exactly. So now, I mean, that's massive.
That's huge.
From 2 millimeters to 0.5 millimeters is huge.
Massive.
It's so big.
Yeah.
And because I was just laughing. Sorry, I caused a bit of a stir on X because I was like,
so what else is
the
there?
FIA puts extremely high resolution on cameras on rear wings to be able to discern what's going on. F1 Twitter, hey, here's a grainy video for you to really see what's happening. It's like, no, you can't see. Come on, it's a grainy video. Like the pixelation is like 3 millimeters on that image. So it's kind of like...
I was laughing so hard at that. I was like, oh my God, guys.
But, that it's like, honestly, like when you think about millimeters, it is such a small amount of movement.
Yes.
I mean, it's very little, but in the grand scheme of things, 2 millimeters to 0.5 millimeters percentage wise is a huge change.
Massive.
So they will give grace in China, or tolerance, as we engineers call it.
Yes.
Of 0.25 millimeters, which means that it can go up to 0.75 millimeters.
So what's about to happen is every single team is going to run this at 0.74, 0.75. That's how this works.
They're going to exploit it for this race, and by the time they get to Japan, they'll have to be down to the 0.5.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
This is happening really fast. How do we think teams... There's not enough time to make a brand new wing. How do we think teams are going to stiffen this? I mean, carbon layups are the way that you can stiffen carbon fiber components by making them thicker in critical areas, etc.
Could we gurney it?
Maybe added an additional support, possibly?
Yeah. I mean, they do have, there are guys at the track that are composite techs, so they could do some composite layup and could make some changes and do some stuff locally. You can't lay up a whole wing at the track. Some
patchwork layups in some critical areas.
Stiffen up, add a couple layers, all of that. Because, I mean, you see those guys do witchcraft week in and week out to repair floors and end plates and all of that. So I think there could be some stuff, unless, it's hard to say because we're not privy to freight dunnage and, what's in what. Were the same wings coming in the air freight from Albert Park, or was there a separate wing set that was already shipped for this race? And then does it even have that flex anymore? But I think regardless, there's going to have to maybe be some patch spot work done if all of the wings have this for teams. All of the teams put their money in this flexi wing thing, all of their money, all of their time and their development. A lot of development went into that. They're going to have to do something to some wings, I think, potentially. It's hard to say, but I think there could be something potentially if they have to, if they're using the Albert Park wings, or they have another wing that flexes like the Albert Park wing.
Yeah. In China is, do they run mostly high downforce spec? Because I think that wasn't China the first place where we saw the high downforce package
for
Red Bull?
So yeah, they're a high downforce track.
I think
pulled up my cheat sheet.
Okay, so with that in mind, the aero loads on the high downforce wings, and if you had designed wings to flex, maybe, because typically higher downforce tracks, you might not necessarily have as much higher top speeds. So the aero loads might be lower. So it's possible that maybe they design them more rigid than, like, say, the medium speeds. I don't know. It's let's see. It could be. I heard a narrative that came from a media source that I won't mention, and I think they have their own biases. But the conversation was nothing is going on with the wings, and we know that because they're implementing this change right away. And if there was something going on, they couldn't implement the change because the teams wouldn't be able to change their wings. I don't think that's true.
I don't buy that.
Because there's enough out there, let's say.
Yes.
That
to suggest that there is.
To suggest that there are things going on.
And that's just in the public forum. That's not what's being campaigned in the paddock. Exactly.
And there's comments directly from the FIA saying, based off of what we saw, we feel like we need to do something.
We need to do something,
So, I mean, I don't understand that narrative.
No.
But I think you're right. There's some things that are going to need to happen. I will be curious to see if there was any differences in the amount of flex based off of the wing type. High downforce, medium downforce, low downforce wings. Obviously, aero loads are higher on high downforce. We won't
see the low downforce wings for another race or two, but I think here would potentially be a good indicator if we get our high downforce wing.
Yeah, and whatever. Suzuka is like a medium downforce track. So. I think it's more front limited, so you'll kind of run medium to low downforce possibly.
So Suzuka could be our first indicator, but I don't think we'll see true low. For a little bit here.
So how does flexible rear wing? I've gotten a lot of questions about this. I'm sure you have as well, Molly.
Yes,
how do flexi wings work? So first thing to talk about, whether you're talking about front wings or rear wings, is that your wings levels are incredibly important for aerodynamic balance.
Yes.
There's a different amount of aero load or downforce on the front wheels as there is on the rear, on the back wheels.
In your balance.
And that, and the proportioning of that balance is your aero balance. So if I've got more aero load on the fronts, maybe I'm 55% biased to front loading, then I'm 45% biased to rear load.
Yeah.
And so I want maybe the car more on the nose. Maybe I like a car that has a tendency to understeer a bit more, and so I want really strong exit traction and strong rear stability so I don't have oversteer. I might bias more towards like a rear biased setup. So that's one thing. So these are your tools that you can adjust, our front wings and rear wings. Now, we can talk about this in the same breath, whether we're talking about front wings or rear wings, but I'll talk about rear wings first. Rear wings, when you are at higher speeds, with the square velocity, the load on the wing increases, which means it's not a linear relationship, okay? This is this is not an exponential, it's a secondary relationship. So that is square. So basically, the faster you go, the influence is like orders and orders greater than it is. So when we talk about the validity of a static linear test representing non-linear aerodynamic loads, it's a complete farce anyway.
Yeah.
So
you're not really testing validly very well.
That's why they are making this so tight, by the way, because they're like, look, you want to flex it? We're going to make it super tight. You're not going to flex anything.
We'd like to see you try. And I mean, these teams they're going to try. But...
They're going to find a way. I'm sure they'll find a way still. But okay, so what does that do for you? You have good balance when the velocity is lower. So let's talk about low speed corners and medium to low speed corners and some medium speed corners.
Yeah.
Which means the aero load is not high enough to actually deflect the wing or your flexible aero. So you get the load to generate downforce that you want. But when you go on the straights and now the force is square with velocity, and increases significantly, now you're past the threshold where you can start to flex your aero components. And what does that do? That helps you to shed that drag that you would otherwise have if you had a more rigid rear wing.
Yeah, and the way that you could like try this, if you ever put your hand out a window, like a car window cupped like this, and you feel the force of the air against it as you tip your hand back, feel how the load changes. That simulates a wing squatting and kind of flexing out of the way. It's a good way to like, if you've ever felt that sensation, that's kind of
that load is drag.
Yes, that's drag. That's the drag
that you're feeling. Exactly. So you don't need downforce when you're going straight. So it's okay for you to shed that drag. So front wings, rear wings, shed the drag, but allow you to be balanced in the low and the medium speed corners as well. So that increases the range for which your car is comfortable now. Yeah, without having to sacrifice top speed.
Exactly.
So when we talk about like tires, oh, well, this isn't really going to affect these teams or whatever because they have great tires. Yeah, it's not 100% of the thing, but it's related. You cannot decouple these things because it's all about balance.
Correct.
So all that just to say that flexi rear wings, while people think is just for going really fast in a straight line, no, gives you much more range in your solution, in your choices. Now, if you have a more rigid rear wing, what teams are going to have to do is make a choice. Do I want to maintain that low and medium speed balance, or do I want to sacrifice that because I want to go faster on the straights?
Yes.
Yeah. So now teams have to make a choice. They no longer have to have that tool that allows them to blur those lines.
Yeah.
Those lines are cleared.
And because everything is so connected, how does that impact your floor performance? Does that impact anything further upstream in the car? Do you have to now make changes in your diffuser? All of that good stuff for corners of your floor because you're losing that efficiency and that gain that you had for that trade-off in the wing.
Yeah. And maybe some teams had decided, and I think everybody was kind of going this direction this year, that peak performance is not great. I want a maybe lower peak performing floor that has a wider window. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, how do you make up for that loss of performance? You put more wing on because wing is dirty downforce, but it's only dirty if you're losing speed on the straights. But if you can shed drag on the straights, that is a completely different equation now. You don't necessarily have to rely on your floor to be super powerful because you can put on more front wing, more rear wing.
Yes.
And you can not sacrifice your straight line speed. So
exactly.
I'm super curious to see what happens.
Yeah.
Maybe some teams it matters more than other teams. I think there is an influence on how the floors perform as well, because you cannot disconnect your rear wing performance with your floor performance or your beam wings with your floor performance because they're all connected.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
So
it's I got really passionate there for a minute just because like these things, like they're so connected and it's so complex, and it's not just going to be like, oh no, this team's not going to have any impact because their tires are great. No, it's related.
No, it's
everything
all related.
is related. Yeah.
Yes, it's one giant system and it is one giant game. Race car development is one giant game of can you live with this loss for this gain and this trade-off. You cannot have your cake and eat it too in racing.
It is just
really
it's compromise after compromise.
After compromise.
I want to be able to generate tire temperature. So what do? I might adjust my camber. I might adjust my tire pressures.
Yeah.
I'll do all these different things to try to generate tire temperature, but not at the expense of my long run pace because I'm overheating my tires, for instance.
Yeah, exactly.
So now, if you've come up with a way to be if you've come up with a way to be able to use a DAS-like system to be able to generate tire temperature while you're on the straights, pull that back, and now change your toe angle, scrub, and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Then, you're adding an additional variable. Flexible aero is another variable. It's no different than DAS and all these other things.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's like, you'll never really compromise on aero in Formula One. So what aero wants, aero is going to get. And that's how it kind of is. Like, you could turn around and be like, hey, I figured out this suspension gain. It's going to get us a 10th, but you have to compromise this on the aero. It's probably never going to happen.
No.
Like a 10th is king. Yeah, aero is king. That's like one of my favorite aero is king stories is the whole, I think Bozy tweeted about this, but it's one of my favorite pieces of like McLaren applied lore is why the F1 ECU is shaped like a triangle. It's because Adrian Newey, in trying to design the aero of his car, needed to put the ECU down in the keel. And so it had to be triangular shaped to go sit in the keel and integrate with his aero concept. And he went to McLaren Applied and said, hey, I need you to make the ECU a triangle so I can put it in the keel for my aero concept. And they did, and it stuck.
That's
like,
ultimate power right there, man. That's
like,
amazing.
To have that power, but like that's like that is peak aero is king mode. Like you got somebody to like change a whole component for the history of its lifetime by asking to do that. Like that's how influential it is, and you will rarely ever find an instance in race cars specifically where you're gonna have your cake and eat it too of trade-offs.
I mean, listeners, to our young listeners, if you're a budding young engineers who want to get into motorsport, go down the aerodynamics route. You will be king of the castle.
Or queens.
King or queens of the castle. Absolutely, 100%. Thank you, Molly.
Or royalty for our non-binary folks as well.
Yes, royalty. Yes. And then, and then if you become a mechanical engineer, guess what? You're going to do packaging and you're going to be low rung on the totem pole and everybody's going to tell you how your stuff needs to fit.
I laugh because I'm traumatized.
Oh, gosh, I know. I think we've all been there to an extent for sure.
Oh, man. Vehicle packaging.
So, let's talk about McLaren's tire preservation, though. I think we've kind of hit it at that.
Yeah.
We did get a great view. Shout out Xavi Gasquez, who's like the GOAT when it comes to like tech pictures. Yeah. Although we love Jamie Price, who's
shout out Jamie. I hope he's enjoying his cruise.
Yes. Jamie.
His much needed break.
Hey, Jamie listens to the pod. Jamie commented on our last one, so
I know.
We love Jamie.
Another Charlotte Mafia member.
Hey, and another fan of all different motorsports. Classes and everything. Big proponent of get out there, watch all the other series as well. There's plenty to enjoy.
Yeah, but we got some good photos.
I'm like rabbit trail guy
it's
today.
Fine.
So we got some great photos from Xavi of that area which is in between the cake tin. Okay, so let's kind of set the stage. I'm using my hands, so if you are listening, go watch the YouTube.
Yeah.
So around, just underneath the tire, there's a round cake tin. And that round cake tin is there because it is sealing off all of the brake components because they no longer want blown wheel nuts. Yes. Yeah, so previous regulations, you would blow all the hot air through the wheel hub, and then it would go out and cause all kinds of disturbances and things like that for your following cars. So no longer, they want everything sealed. All the air that comes into the brake assembly goes out the brake assembly on the back and gets pretty much thrown at the car. And arrows have to deal with it.
Yes. Yay.
Yeah, the joys. So it is a sealed housing. No holes allowed. Okay? No. There's no holes in the McLarens. No. The cake tin was taken off. And what you see is what's under the cake tin, which is now how all of that air is being routed through all the brake components and everything. So when you're taking into account cooling, you have to also consider heating. Why? Because you have to heat tires for qualifying, right? You have to take them through a prep lap.
You have to prep your brakes too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, your brakes don't work if they're cold, so you cannot make them too cold.
You can try, but good luck.
Yeah, good luck. I mean, carbon on carbon is like when it's cold, nope, not going to bite.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So,
pun intended.
Yeah, exactly. So right. So some magic that McLaren has done. Number one, it looks really cool. It's got all these like turning vanes and all kinds of stuff, channels. But McLaren is really good at warming their tires up, and they're really great at dissipating heat to where they don't overheat them. So there's some kind of magic going on in that solution that allows them to get the best of both worlds, because you usually have to compromise. Yeah. Right?
Yeah. You can get close, but usually there is a compromise. And I know we talked about it a little bit at the end of last season, is there was like the water microparticle stuff going on in tires, allowing for heat up with like water holding, so having so much higher of a specific heat, not specific density,
specific heat.
Thank you. Yeah. I was like, it's on the tip of my tongue. Specific heat, and how that can store heat better. And once you heat it up, it takes longer to heat up, but once you heat it up, it's heated up, and all of that good stuff, and the efficiency. And that's not me saying that they're confirmed to be doing this or anything like that. But if this is still a topic and this is still something going on in the paddock that is being looked into, could this be that?
Yeah. But I mean, it's being thrown around again.
Yeah.
You know, I think I've made my position clear on this one in the past, but it's like, same. I think there is something cool going on in there.
There is. There very much is.
It looks
what it is.
Yeah, it looks intelligently designed.
Yeah, really, really like efficiently designed.
I wish I knew the trick, because like when you let the air
I'd tell you the trick if I knew it, gladly.
Yeah, because it's like, think about what you can do to make that relationship like a variable relationship, meaning I don't let as much air in, or I don't direct as much cooling to the areas that I want to heat up. But when I want to cool the areas that I don't want to overheat, now I can do something differently to increase the amount of conductive heat dissipation in those things.
Yeah.
So how do you do that with something that doesn't change? Because it's all supposed to be fixed.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't have an active, this would be kind of cool if you had like driver controlled like ducting, to where like you could close or open some of the ducts in the brake ducts while you're driving. Like for heat up, you close a bunch of them and you don't cool it, and then when you're in the middle of a race, now you can like open them up. And
that'd be cool.
But like it doesn't seem like there's anything like that going on.
Think so. Yeah, the one thing that stuck out to me, I feel like in photos I did see of the McLaren from the weekend, was their camber. They seemed like they were running pretty cambered versus what some teams were doing. Others, like I feel like I saw a little bit more this on their tire, and I know that can help.
That would help warm up.
Yeah, it would help warm up, but it would cause too much wear. Yeah, potentially. Usually. But they didn't have wear. No. I don't know. Maybe maybe they have a good combination with their toe too, and what they're combining with the toe. But I did notice it looked like they were running a pretty, I don't want to say excessive, but it was like enough for me to notice. So like, oh, that's actually pretty cambered for them. Yeah. Or like compared to who I saw kind of across the grid. Maybe something there, but
maybe they're doing something with like flow regimes where, you know, from like a aerodynamics or fluid mechanics standpoint, you can have different structures that the air interacts with. And when the air interacts with those structures at higher speeds, so the Reynolds number increases, you generate different downstream flow profiles. Yeah. You can have larger, smaller turbulent wakes. You can get more or less separation. You know, does introducing turbulence into your cooling help to dissipate more energy, so they're able to, say, at lower speeds when they're just kind of prepping their tires and they're kind of going through that. Yeah. And, you know, that would be something really interesting to look at is, do we see anything different in the way that McLaren does their prep laps in qualifying compared to what other people are doing? Like, are they going in, like, super slow, for instance? Yeah.
We'll have to watch that this weekend, and we'll revisit this.
Yeah.
Because I was going to go look. I didn't see any shots, like, from above to look for toe. Because, like, you'll set a camber and then fine-tune with toe. So, because, like, they looked pretty cambered from, like, the head-on shots. I didn't see anything with toe. So I'm like, maybe there was something there. And then with the way that kicks the turbulence and the outwash and all of that, too, like you're saying. But I think it's going to be one to watch. I think we should keep an eye on that this weekend in China.
Yeah, let's do that. So we're rounding third and coming home now, Molly, and we've got our from third to home topic, which is
spicy as well.
Spicy. This whole thing about potentially V10s, biofuel V10s coming back, and potentially one of the scenarios on the table. So it sounds like there's enough support or interest that they want to go to some sort of larger engine displacement biofuel solution, and maybe a move away from as much hybrid power, that they're considering possibly not doing the 2026 hybrid regulations, maybe extending the current regulations that we're in to give teams more time to be able to find like a higher engine displacement biofuel. What's going on? What do we know?
I mean, you pretty much nailed it. So essentially, there is some conversation around, do we maintain this formulation and give more time to the 2026 regulations, as there is support for these other options? And I think there's a lot to this. There's a lot of reasons why teams could want to do this. And the V10 thing surprised me because there's not a lot of road relevancy to a V10 anymore for any of these manufacturers and teams. So that kind of surprised me. But in reality, if you go to a V10 and change your hybrid split, you could actually improve weight and packaging. You can you can really pack a V10 into a smaller packaging area, higher displacement, less reliance on hybrid means less hybrid packaging, because that's a big concern with this 26 regulation is the 50-50 split with the larger capacity batteries and everything that you need. And with that, the car is getting shorter, but it's heavier, like that's the trade-off with the need for the increased amount of hybrid. So it's one of those things that it makes sense when you think about it in terms of like improving the car and the size and the weight, because that's always been something on these cars that we've been talking about wanting improved for 2026 going forward. And we didn't get that as much. But also I think it says a lot that like maybe this heavy hybrid spread isn't the right formulation for what the goals were.
They're realizing one of the things that, and I know Red Bull and Max catch so much crap sometimes for how they speak out, but like they said a long time ago that like, that you're going to have to essentially consume fuel just to recharge the batteries on a lap.
And I know. I think even we've said that. Blake has said that. Blake Kinsey.
And turned out to be true. They've had to find now a whole bunch of creative ways to try to shed drag. Yes. So you've got this like front wing DRS now, which was previously called X mode, and all these things going on. I mean, I'm just putting, lipstick on a pig of a regulation set, and we need to just abandon this thing. But teams have been working on this for some time now.
Yeah,
and there's a lot of wasted money.
There's a lot of wasted development, a lot of wasted time. There was supposed to be new electronics packaging coming in with the McLaren applied system for 26. There is a lot of stuff that's tied to this that this could kind of affect. And I really hope that it doesn't affect cost cap in this development, because this is capped development for all of the manufacturers. The one thing that I thought was really interesting, and I'm going to pull this world relevancy thing, is we also saw some talk about V8s. Some hybrid V8s as the option, some large block, I think V8s would come in. And I just want to throw out that I actually like that solution better than a V10. Personally, if I am an engineering development manager and I have to make the decision, and I am any of these powertrain manufacturers, I personally like that. You know why? Corvette C8R, that's a V8. Ford Mustang GT3 that races IMSA and WEC as well. V8. Aston Martin Vantage, V8. Mercedes-AMG GT, V8. Lexus, which is Toyota, V8. Ferrari has a V8 in WEC IMSA. Stock cars are running, I believe, V8s right now as well for cup cars, hypercars, the Cadillac V-Series, V8. There are V8s out there that are running hybrid currently or non-hybrid, but are running in this power domain in these FIA governed series already for these manufacturers. I love the thought of a screaming V10 and its packaging improvements and everything it brings along with it. But you have to think about Formula One and racing as a whole, as manufacturers don't just do this for the marketing money. It is a road relevancy game. It always will be. And that's why there's so many manufacturers that have flown and come in and just dogpiled onto hypercar in IMSA. That's why, like, I personally feel like Formula E's days might be numbered, because there's so much interest waning in EVs, and the manufacturers aren't investing like they are in this e-powertrain development, that's not their focus anymore. Whatever this formulation is for Formula One, when they reformulated this, was at, I believe, and people can come in my DMs if they want, but it was at the urging of a manufacturer who wanted this specific relevancy and this specific power split in this new formulation based on cost and everything that would take to build this. And that manufacturer has no longer entered the series. So
it's a good point.
If I'm the engineering development manager having to make this decision, I would almost want a V8 versus a V10 from a pure, like, what I can get out of it for development and its relevancy to my platforms, my other racing platforms, my road cars, all of that. I think that for me makes a lot more sense than a V10, but there is enough interest, it sounds like, just period across the board, to shift away from this powertrain formulation for 26. Or I don't know if I heard this right or read this right, but it sounds like they might let them come into effect, but for 3 years instead of 5 years, instead of delaying this formulation, like letting this formulation stick around versus the 26 formulation. So I think that it's too early, I think, to really tell, but that's kind of what's going on. And I like that idea. I think that there's a lot of efficiencies and a lot of things that are better than the current proposed formulation that they could do.
Yeah, no.
Right, I'm off my soapbox. Sorry.
No, but hey, this your jam. I mean, like we're talking about power units and all those things, and I think you make a lot of very salient points there. That for me, I'm a fan of anything that gives us an opportunity to make the car smaller, because I just really think that is something that we've been lacking for many years now.
Yeah, and I think a V8 would give you a lot. You could do aerodynamically back in there with the change in hybrid packaging too. So
good.
Yeah,
no, that's awesome. No, it's a great topic to close on there, Molly. Any parting thoughts from your side or anything? Or?
No, I'm looking forward to a continually wrecked sleep schedule, and with China, and I feel really bad for all of the teams that are on it too. That got delayed with freight overnight. Gosh. It's been kind of crazy, but we're right there with you.
Our thoughts are with you.
Yes, our thoughts are with you, and we're right there with you with the lack of sleep. I'm excited to get some more data, I think, on the cars and kind of understand the pecking order a little bit better. Kind of see what's going on with Flexi-wings, all of that. I don't know if you have any parting thoughts for China coming up.
I liked China last year. I thought the race was good, not
race.
Just because Max won, but just because I thought this is a cool track. Yes. And the racing was good there, so it felt
I really liked it last year.
Okay, maybe we'll get a good one this year. So that's what I'm looking forward to. But hey, as always, absolutely blast doing another episode with you, Molly.
Of course.
We are in the works of trying to set up some guests.
Yes.
For some upcoming episodes. So be sure everyone to follow us on all of our socials, to be able to see once that gets announced and when those episode drops. But until then, this is Dr. Obbs, and I'm signing off as well for my amazing co-host Molly, and we will see you next time.
Yep.
Thanks, everybody.
See you next time. Bye.